Good evening. My name is Anne Bogart, and I'm the moderator this evening, which means I'm going to tell you what we're going to do, and then we're going to do it. And I hope it goes well. Anyway, what we're going to do is I'm telling you who I am. And I'm a theater director and an opera director, and I think I was asked to moderate because this will be a lot about opera and the making of opera, and the thinking about the opera, the realizing opera. So we're each going to introduce ourselves, and then we're going to show you something and talk about something and talk a little more and open it up. So Isaac, would you start by introducing yourself and then Susan?
Yes. My name is Isaac Mizrahi, and I worked on that production of Magic Flute with Susan. This production of Magic Flute with Susan Bernofsky.
Wow, holy minimalism out there.
Well, I don't know what else to say. Well, because it's just an introduction. Right? It was an introduction. Thank you. Yes, I'm very good at keeping things to, yes.
We'll talk about
Short,
this.
keeping
We'll
things
talk
short.
more on this later.
Yeah.
How's the sound, by the way? Can you all hear back there? Okay. I'm Susan Bernofsky. I worked on this production with Isaac and with a wonderful choreographer, John Heginbotham, who I wish could have been here today, but he had a appointment elsewhere, and since we're at Columbia University, I'll say I also direct the literary translation program in the School of the Arts writing program, which you will hear me talking about more soon, i.e. translation.
So Isaac is going to start by actually introducing some of the photos to us. So we'll start with the visuals, since you're a visual dude.
Yes, I am. Yeah, so I don't even remember when I was approached to work on the opera at St. Louis, Opera Festival St. Louis, but it was a number of years in advance, and one of the first things I thought was to get the right translation, which was why I called Susan, and the other thing I thought was important was to actually be able to design and direct the production at the same time and work with John, because the vision that I had for it was a big dance event. I thought it would be great to see all of that music, which I don't find terribly intimidating. I find it very danceable, you know. And so I thought it would be great as a big dance event. So once I had Susan in place and John in place, I felt much more comfortable to design it and to conceive of it. And you know, I thought it would be a smart idea to make it in a very flexible environment, like a sound stage. And that's basically the idea. That's what you're looking at. And then everything else is based on like a reference from some kind of film or not film, just film. It's a reference from the film, you know, almost verbatim.
Who's that, Isaac?
That's Pamina, and that's monostatos. Yeah, monostatos. A very important vowel at the end of that word. And some of the and what I like is that most of the creatures in the opera kind of relate on some level, like in a color way or some kind of coded way. But in the end, it's really just a reference to some movie, you know, to some old movie. That's the Birdman, who was called Papageno, and that's Papagena at the end, when she turns into a pretty kind of girl. I can't see, I'll just follow along this way because it's craning my neck, though. What's next? Those are the three ladies, who I actually think are like the best part of the whole show. I don't know why. I just think they have like the funniest music and the funniest bits in the whole show. I love the three ladies in that show. And that's Papageno. And you know, it was kind of wonderful because it was easy to, you know, it's an opera that begs this kind of flexibility, I think. It really does. It goes, like if you ever read the libretto, whether you read it in German or English, it's really a crazy panoply of different locations. Like, you know, every minute it goes from a garden to a desert to a pagoda to, you know, I mean, it really has so many sort of postmodern references right there, you know, or like postmodern references. And so it's really smart to this idea of like in a soundstage where you can suspend disbelief and roll a platform in with a palm tree on it, you know, or like open a door and suddenly there's like a projection of a pyramid, you know. It sort of worked very well. That's Tamino, and that's actually a copy of a costume that Gene Kelly wore in American in Paris. And there was a lot of that sort of, a lot of that influence, that kind of color influence of those color movies. And I'm trying to think of a great artist's name who did a lot, who was very influential in that time. And I can't think of his name, I'm so sorry, that's just terrible of me not to remember that name, but it'll come to me later. But anyway, like that, for instance, feels very much, that was the Menagerie, and that feels very much like that person's work, and I can't remember his name, but it'll come to me. And those are the Shriners. And of course, yeah. I just thought it would be really funny to make them Shriners.
Especially since we were in St. Louis.
That's right. They're in St. Louis, which is the world kind of headquarters for the Shriners or something.
There's
right?
a lot of Shriner
There's
activity.
a lot of Shriner activity there.
I'm
There's
so
also-
worried about how that was going to be received.
There's also more Shriner activity in New York than you would be comfortable knowing about, actually.
Wasn't that,
Maybe we need to do about a field trip.
Yes, they do. That was a really fun day.
wasn't that even deeper in that Mozart was a Masonic
Yes,
himself,
yes,
and
he
so
was.
you're doubling back on yourself? I mean,
Yeah.
There's a kind of, what I'm looking at is both a delight but also a meaning.
Yeah.
So,
Well, but also, Anne, we went to one day to a Masonic, that fabulous Masonic like skyscraper on 23rd Street or whatever.
I did a show in there once.
Did you? Yes.
Oh.
Are you a Mason? No.
In one of the
They can't have
rooms?
ladies.
In one
There
of
are no
the,
ladies in the Masonic.
In the ballroom there.
they are, no, there's a annoyed lady in the library.
There's one, no, she wasn't that annoyed. I think she was more like medicated is what she was. but at some point, Susan kind of, like, I was like, shut up, shut up. She was like, and what about women? You know, it was like, no, don't say that. It was like, no, we love women. And I was like, really, you love them? So I said, oh yeah, well, there's a whole order of women now. Which I just think is such a boring thing
ladies
to have.
auxiliary.
A ladies auxiliary. And then at some point, she, not even me, she said, and what about gays? You know, it was like, oh, we have some great gay, you know, people like Oscar Wilde. And I was like, really? That is so lame to say Oscar Wilde. As a Mason, right? You know, before he was in jail for the rest of his life, right? Yeah, sorry. But anyway, so they were going, we decided to make them Shriners, right? Yeah.
I mean, you have to understand, like, not just Mozart was a Freemason, but Schikaneder, who wrote the
Right.
libretto, and also the guy who financed the production. And the whole story of the Magic Flute is like a big illustration of the core principles of Freemasonry.
Right.
And so part of our challenge of updating it was thinking, okay, if you subtract that part of the production or parody it, like what's left?
Right, and by the way, I thought that was why it was good to kind of give this kind of dance double thing to the show. Like they had dance doubles, a lot of them had dance doubles, so that that could be expressed in a different, not ironic way, but in a deeper way. You know what I mean? Because if you're singing, women are ridiculous, right? I mean, you're singing women are ridiculous, and you sort of can't change that lyric. Even if you're Susan, you can't change that.
I did change
lyric.
that lyric.
We did a little bit, you know. And we actually, it was Susan's brilliant idea. She had this great idea, which met with a lot of, you have no idea, because you were there for part of it, but it was met with a lot of controversy. She decided that it would be so much better to have Monositas' song in the first act. One, it makes the second act really way less long. And second, it sort of develops his kind of character as something more than just a rapist. Yeah, exactly. You know, and it was such a good idea. And at first, our great darling, Jane Glover, who conducted, she was all for it. And then somehow, like I got there the first day, the person was like, oh, right, I forgot to tell you we can't do that, right? I was like, wait a minute, you know, because somehow it was like key signatures, which of course I understood.
Yeah.
But then, you know, you can't really transpose, and yet you can. If it was like, you know, I don't know who, Renee Fleming, you would have transposed it or something, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you would.
We didn't
You would.
transpose.
But we wouldn't. She just couldn't, and you couldn't, right? So, but in the end, we won the fight, and it was in the first act, and no one even noticed. And she kept saying, "Oh, you're gonna get, I'm gonna get slammed for that," you know. But I was like, no one's even gonna notice. Okay?
Can I put in a sidebar about Jane Glover, who's an amazing
She's
conductor. She's
amazing.
English, she came to speak to my students here at Columbia, directing students and grad students. And she said, I said, well, what do you think about directors in opera? She said, you know you're in trouble if on the first day the director comes out, opens the score, and he creaks.
Oh.
You know you're in trouble if the director's reading the libretto on the CD.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
you won her.
I was so lucky to work with her.
Yeah, she's amazing.
I'd worked with her before as a costume designer.
Did you follow that about the creaks?
Yes,
Yes.
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 It's like, like choreographers who get their musical inspiration from gala dinner giveaway bags. Like that's where they do their musical research. It's like, like a
You
Poulenc
look confused.
CD.
I'm going to say, if the score opens, it's never been read, it creaks.
Right.
It's like
Oh,
in the
yeah,
old
yeah,
in the
exactly.
old days when they used to have pages.
Books had
Books
pages.
had pages and
Yeah.
remember that was the.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't remember them personally, but so I mean, I was thinking winning Jane Glover over to
Yeah.
transposing
Boy, yes.
in an iconic work like
Yeah,
Magic Flute.
yes.
That's
yes.
big.
Big.
My heart goes sunk the moment the day she said, "Oh, I told you guys that you could do this, but 6 months later, no, you can't."
No, you can't, exactly, yeah. But she always was so, I mean, the great thing about her was that she was really open to it. And I think in the end, secretly she liked it, I mean,
Of course. Yes.
I want to back up and say, just for context, because maybe this is completely confusing the conversation we're having. One of the things that we wanted to take on about the opera is that it is really seriously racist and pretty seriously misogynistic also. And this is on purpose because in the Freemason worldview that Mozart was illustrating in a very black and white way, sunlight is good, darkness is bad, masculinity is good, femininity is bad, white people are good, black people are bad. And so Monostatus, who you saw here looking literally blue, is a Moor, and
Yeah.
he's in the play to sort of illustrate by his own being, in an allegorical sense, badness and evil, like the Queen of the Night, the female lead who became Isaac's muse in this production, and put her front and center. And so, the intervention with Monostatos he has a very important song that was originally in Act 2, and it's basically I'm not getting anything I want, so I'm going to rape this girl now.
That's not what the song is. The song is, why can't I have anything I want?
Well, that's the rewritten song.
No. The song is, I have feelings too. No, how does the song end? You changed, what was
Bin ich
it?
nicht aus Fleisch und Blut?
And what does that mean?
Am I not of flesh
Am
and
I
blood?
not a flesh and blood? Right, exactly. Am I not a flesh and blood? So if you hear that after he's kind of leered at this girl, it doesn't really make as much sense. And it was her brilliant idea to bring it forward. Sort of tell the audience that he thinks of himself as this kind of bereft person who's looking for something more than just, slave.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I completely rewrote the lyrics of that song to make him sound, it's now like, woe is me, why am I so mistreated song.
Mm-hmm.
And it's at the beginning, and it's now, like in a musical, each major character has a song saying, this is me and this is my problem. That becomes his song.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. It was this very smart kind of thing. It was really smart.
First of all, Opera Theater of St. Louis does most of their operas in translation, correct, into English.
Yes, they
So-
do all of their things.
So when you were contacted by Opera Theater, and was it assumed that you would do it in English rather than in German?
Yes.
So that was not a problem for you?
Well, no, but it is a problem for me usually.
Yeah.
But somehow, I don't know why, but I'd seen English versions of Magic Flute, and I didn't hate them. I didn't absolutely hate them.
What did you see? Do you remember?
I saw, when I was a kid, I saw the one at the Met, which was one that David Hockney designed.
Right.
I don't know who directed that one, but he designed it, and that was in English, and I did not. I thought really, because I was a kid, I thought, oh, look how Mozart wrote an opera in English. I really thought it was written in English for the longest time. And then I saw the one at the Met that I don't like so much.
The Julie Taymor.
Yeah, I don't like that one that much. I'm sorry to say I don't like it.
What don't you like about it?
First of all, it's a lot. Oh, I can't really say what I don't like about it. It's mean. So first of all, you know, I don't
It's
like that it's
interesting,
90
though, isn't
minutes.
it?
I don't like that it's 90 minutes. I think that's like, you know, sort of wrong to do that. You know, if you want like a light entertainment for children or something like that, and you want to call it a recital or something, or you want to refer to the music or something, that's one thing. But to cut something like that to 90 minutes is just not, to me, like not. And yet it worked, okay? Yet it worked.
So how did you knew that you were doing it in English, how did you come across working with Susan?
Well, you know, I have to say, like, the Andrew Porter is quite good. It's not terrible, you know? But it doesn't necessarily, it does, you know, and this is the thing with opera theater, like, they originally wanted me to do a lot of things, and I don't like to do them because I don't like to take, especially really Italian opera, I don't think really translates that great into English. I just don't, you know? Especially when like I came back to them and said, oh, how about Britain? Or how about like Purcell's? And there's a lot of English written English opera, and they just weren't that, you know, they weren't that into it, or else they had a production a year ago that I didn't hear about, you know? So all the things I wanted to do weren't, and the first thing I worked on for them was this Sondheim thing called A Little Night Music. I did that like about 5 years ago, and that was really a great experience. And it's written in English. And that was where we landed, because they said, oh yeah, we would do a show. It doesn't have to be an opera, blah, 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 right? And there's a lot of singing. And so to get to this, to get to Magic Flute was difficult, because when you think about what operas can be translated, to me there aren't that many, you know? This is one. I'm trying to think of another one I could think of that would be translated.
And this one is more translatable because so much of it is funny, and you know, humor in something like this is easier to translate than
And
something
wasn't it
tragic.
written also for a theater company,
Yep.
more or less?
Yes. Yes, it
Susan,
was.
could you say a little more about this?
Sure. So it was written for Emanuel Schikaneder's theater company, and he was somebody that Mozart had met socially, and then you know they became lodge brothers. But this was a large theater that did a lot of really popular productions, both theater and opera, and it was a theater for the people. And Schikaneder himself, so the guy who wrote the libretto, worked with Mozart. He performed, and he was famous for being a very good and charismatic performer, a good actor, having a not too bad singing voice. But in fact, you know, if you look at the original casting of the opera, Mozart wrote the roles for specific people in his company. And so, you know, he had a soprano who was just a virtuoso voice, and he wrote the Queen of the Night for her. Sarastro also has a very difficult, challenging role to sing. Papageno, that's the role that Schikaneder himself sang, and it's an easier role to sing. Now, it requires a lot of performing, it's very burlesque, it's very actorly, and if you listen to the opera looking for this, every time Papageno has an entrance, the orchestra plays his first few notes for him so he can come in properly and in tune, you know. So the role was written to make it easy for him to do his thing.
One thing I will say is when you began talking about the opera, you said a few things. You said it's slightly like racist, and it's slightly like sort of misogynistic. I would reverse the order. I would say it's quite misogynistic, and a little racist, you know. And so like you were saying, like to me the show, the first thing was that it was from the perspective of Queen of Night, which I thought was a kind of an innovation, you know, because if you take it from her perspective and you tell the story from her perspective, right? Then somehow it is less misogynistic. It's like this kind of nightmare she keeps reliving in this soundstage, you know? That was my idea, to sort of frame it in the right way, you know?
So wait, so how did you meet Susan?
Through Myra Kalman. I actually said, oh, Myra, who translated that book that you illustrated? Or what was that book that you all worked on?
Robert Walser,
Walser, yeah.
Microscripts.
But what was Microscripts, right, exactly. And I just liked that translation so much. Or else, I said, do you know any funny people who speak German? And she said, oh, I do. You know, I know Susan. And that's how we met. Yeah.
Thanks, Myra.
Yeah, thanks, Myra.
When you meet a collaborator, I mean, it's remarkable, Isaac, that you directed it and designed it. I find that, I mean, as a director, it's the thought, I don't even know
Really?
how you would begin doing that. But there is a leap of faith that you take. In the opera, you don't normally, as a director, cast the singers. They're cast for you.
I know.
So you have to take a leap of faith with a lot of people.
I know. You know what I have to say though? Like the first time I worked at Opera St. Louis, I cast it.
Are you?
Yeah, and that was such a big difference. It really felt better, you know. Here, I had no control. I didn't agree with a lot of the singing. You know, I didn't agree with the actual singing. You know, some of it was amazing. Like the three ladies were great, and I liked.
But wait, isn't
liked.
that an issue to talk to Jane Glover about?
Yeah, and we did talk about it, and she didn't cast it either. You know, she didn't
So it
cast
was
it either.
essentially.
It was Opera Theatre St. Louis. It was, you know, Maestro Lord and Jim Robinson. And they have great taste, and I love what they do, and I trust them. And to some extent, like, I was kind of thrilled not to have to cast it, because it's like, that's your mistake. You know, you could blame things on people a little bit, right? Yeah, so.
But you took a leap of faith with Susan. You said, you got together, you said, she seems good. I like her translation of Balser.
Yes, and also, you know, the thing about Susan was that we had a ton of time. You know, we had like a year to work on it. So I kind of had a lot. I thought to myself, well, if I don't like what she's doing, I'm just going to
give her notes.
Give her
Did
notes.
you give her
So
any notes?
I gave her some notes, yeah. But I loved what she did also, so it was really easy. She gave me notes.
What did you, when you say you loved it, what did you like about it?
You know, I liked that we agreed on something, and then she kind of like didn't say, oh, wait a minute, I had a better idea. You know what I mean? Like we both thought we were going to write it in this kind of like, you know, Godot-ish kind of, like, you know, right? We said that.
Yeah, the assignment was to do something that was a little Beckett's.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, and that's what Isaac said.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about it, minimal, and just kind of like, and make it kind of, because I don't think the scenes are that interesting. I'm sorry. I don't
The
think
scenes are
that
way longer
interesting.
than anybody knows.
What a
because-
perfect moment. Actually, Susan is going to read. Susan is going to read a little bit of the, not the German. She's not going to read the German.
I
You
could.
could.
But
You
I
read
won't.
the German and then
She
read
memorized
a
the German,
translation
actually.
and then her translation, which I think would be really fascinating.
Okay.
Okay.
So, great segue.
Great segue.
So most people don't know how talky this opera is. You know, the original productions must have gone like 2.5, 3 hours, really, really long, and lots of talky scenes because, you know, Schikaneder's theater, they were entertaining the crowd with lots of burlesque. So I'm going to read you one scene in the Andrew Porter translation of the complete, just to give you an idea. And then I'm going to read you a couple scenes in my very much reduced translation, okay? And so this is the very first scene. Our two main characters, Tamino of slide 2 meets Papageno of slide 3, and they have a little run-in. And this is what they say to each other. So Tamino's going to be, I'm not an actor, I'm the translator, but Tamino's going to be kind of over here, and Tamino's over here, and Papageno's over here. Okay. So Tamino, who's they'll tell you who they are. Hey there! What there? Tell me, merry friend, who are you? Who am I? What a dumb question. A human being, just as you are. Now, if I asked you who you were, I should answer you that I come of royal blood. That's way above me. Put things more simply if you want me to understand. My father is a sovereign who rules over many lands and people, so I am called a prince. Lands, people, prince. And so I'm asking you, hold it, let me ask the questions. First of all, tell me, are there other lands and other people beyond these mountains? Many thousands. I might be able to do some good business there with my birds. He's a bird catcher. Now you tell me, in what part of the country are we? In what part of the country? Why, between the valleys and the mountains? Precisely, but what is this country called? Who rules over it? Can't tell you that any more than I could tell you how I came into this world. What? You don't even know where you were born or who your parents were? Absolutely not. I know neither more nor less than that I was brought up and looked after by an old man, old but very jolly. He was probably your father? Can't say. But didn't you know your mother? I did not know her, but sometimes I heard it said that my mother was once in the service of the star-blazing queen of the night in that tight-shut building over there. If she's still alive or what became of her, I don't know. I only know that my straw hut, which shelters me from the rain and the cold, isn't far from here. How do you live? By eating and drinking like all people. And how do you get your food and drink? By swapping. I catch all sorts of birds for the star-blazing queen and her ladies, and in exchange I get my daily food and drink from them. All right, I'll stop there. So that's sort of
Boring.
very, very
What
talkative.
year was that written?
1791.
Yeah, 1791.
1791.
No, the translation.
Oh, the translation.
81 or something like that?
Yeah, 19 in the 80s.
80s.
Andrew Porter, and I think it's very well
It's good.
translated. You know, but it's he's translating all the little details. So
that was that version.
we wanted something that would be short and snappy and minimalistic, and the talking scenes are really just framing the songs. And I didn't retranslate the songs. We used Andrew Porter's translations of those.
Because
which I-
those are like very verbatim, right? And
Well,
we treat them, yeah.
And it's very technical,
It's
like
very
like a soprano
Oh.
cannot sing like this consonant or this vowel at this pitch, but maybe at this pitch. There's a lot of technical knowledge behind that. So even in the tweaking, the songs that I tweaked, we had to go over in rehearsal to make sure the singers could handle, which was really interesting. Anyhow, okay, here's the new version of this scene you just heard. Hey, who are you? Who are you? Who am I? Who are you? I'm a prince off to seek my fortune. Well, I catch birds. Birds? Birds. And these birds, for what table are they destined? I serve the star-blazing queen of the night. This is her realm. And in exchange for my fine birds, her ladies bring me the most delectable food and drink. The star-blazing queen of the night, tell me, have you ever seen this divine creature? Seen her, seen the queen of the night? What human eye could pierce that veil of hers woven with inky blackness? I should like to meet this queen. And do you happen to know of any princesses in need of rescuing or dragons to be slain? I just killed my first serpent. At least I think I did. Actually, it was me. You? While you were taking your beauty rest, strangled it, I did. You should know that Tamino's first entrance, he's being chased by a snake. In this production, played by a dancer. And Tamino in Schikaneder's original is he's the hero of the thing. And in our production, he's a little bit of a dumb cluck. He's easily influenced by people. So I tried to make him sound not as clever as Papageno. Papageno's the one who's supposedly dumb, but in fact, kind of clever, and he's just lied about killing the snake, which the three ladies in slide, whatchamacallit. Yeah, there they are. The three ladies who were the snake killers come in and shout at him, and this is going to be another scene. They're all speaking together, but sometimes they speak individually. They come in together.
Yours.
Yeah, I'm going to read, no more of the other, I'll just read mine. Papageno says, it's for me. Tamino, who are these fine ladies? I never saw the likes of them before. They're the queen's ladies in waiting, come to collect my birds and bring me their wine, cakes, and sweet figs. Papageno! Except they sound none too pleased. Greetings, fair ladies, and behold the treasures I have snared. Papageno! Today the queen sends you not wine, but a jug of water. And she told me to give you, instead of cake, a stone. I hope you find it to your liking. What? I'm to feast on stones? And instead of figs, I bring you this tasty padlock. She puts it on his lips. Papageno's gesturing. Perhaps you wish to know, the ladies say, why Her Highness has ordered us to punish you. No more lies, Papageno. Was it you who killed the serpent? Who then? Young man, it is we who saved you as you slept. At the bidding of Our Lady, Her Majesty, the Queen of Night, she sends you this portrait of her daughter, for whom she seeks a worthy husband. Behold. And then they leave. Actually, this is Isaac. This is how they leave. Auf Wiedersehen. Adieu. Bye.
That was not me. That was actually Jane Glover.
Oh, was it?
Somehow that was in another production and she liked it. So I was like, okay,
It
fine.
was funny.
I was picking my battles that day. It was pretty fun. Okay.
Anyway, I'll read maybe one more scene and then we
Sure.
go on.
Yes.
Okay, so Papageno and Papagena, Papageno the whole time, he's looking for a wife, and this is a running joke, and he gets sent an old lady who's actually a charming young thing dressed up as an old lady. Oh wait, no, that's not the scene I'm going to read. Scratch that, forget what I just said. Tamino and Papageno, the three ladies, ask them to go rescue the Queen of the Night's daughter who's been kidnapped. That's the scene I'm going to read you. She's in captivity. Papageno doesn't want to do it. Tamino's like, oh boy, let's go rescue her. He's seen her picture. He thinks she's cute. She's the ballerina who's playing her is dancing beautifully as he looks at her picture and sings about how gorgeous she is. Yeah. So then he sends Papageno to go do the dirty work, and Papageno runs into the fortress where she's been imprisoned by Monostatos, the blue guy, who's the servant in charge of keeping her locked up. Monostatos and Papageno run into each other and get really scared, and then both run off, and then Papageno's recovering his wits. What a fool I was to be so frightened. There are blue birds, so why not blue people? Oh, daughter of the Queen of the Night. The daughter, Pamina. Why, who are you? An envoy of Her Majesty the Queen. She's locked up, he picks the lock. What are you doing? I'm really good at picking. There, you're free. Quick, take me away from here before he comes back. One moment, let's make sure. He takes the picture out of the portrait and sits down looking at it, looking at her. It wouldn't do to bring the wrong girl. In the original, this is a whole page in which he says, like, red lips, check. You know, pretty hair, check. Where did you get my portrait? From Prince Tamino, where else? He fell in love with it, and now I'm supposed to help him save you. A prince in love with me? She's a dimwit. That must be my mother's doing, but hurry! Monostatos will be back soon, and then we're done for. Oh, that blue guy? Don't worry about him, it's Sarastro, the big boss we need to worry about. So hurry! Actually, says Papageno, do you have a snack on you? I could use a little pick-me-up, and to tell the truth, my feet might be fleeter if there were a girl waiting for me at home. Have you no wife, you poor man? Papageno has no Papagena. I could pluck out all my feathers when I think of it. And then they like sing the ballad of...
In the world, yes.
Yeah, they sing the ballad of happy heteronormativity.
I mean, it's the weirdest thing. No, they do. It's like about how important married life is and how every wife needs a husband, every husband needs a wife.
Do you have
It's
an
kind of
opinion
sickening.
about that?
Yeah, it's kind of sickening. But I have to say, like, the beautiful dance that John made up, that's my favorite dance that he made up. It really is. It's just this beautiful dance between two monkeys that are attendants of Queen of Night. Like, they do stuff, like move sets around, and she like points at things and they bring things to people, these monkeys. And they do this beautiful kind of homosexual dance. It's quite beautiful.
Actually, since we're talking about the choreography and your own aesthetics in relation to choreography, in relation to design, let's take a few steps back. I think you
Okay.
might share this interest with me. Could you talk a little bit, Isaac, about your trajectory from the world of design into the world of performance, into the world of designing for performance and into opera directing? That's quite
it's a leap.
an arc. Yeah.
But of course, it started in the performing arts. I went to high school performing arts. I'm from the New York City area. And
Where exactly?
Brooklyn, yeah. But
so you came into
I
town.
came into town. Yeah. Well, my dad's office was on 34th Street, and
What did your father do?
he was a manufacturer of children's clothing.
That explains everything.
It does, right? But anyway, so so I was kind of initiated into the world of art through performance, and I always said that like somehow that was a great education because. First of all, you're never intimidated by things. We were taken to, as a kid, we were taken to the opera a lot. My parents liked it, and ballet a lot. And my sister was actually a ballet dancer and a ballet teacher. And so, like, there was a great exposure to all that. And so, and somehow I got very involved in at Performing Arts, not just acting, I was in the acting department, but also very, very involved in dance.
Wait, in those days, were you
Weirdly
thinking of
involved in
yourself going into performance yourself?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
wanted to be
yes,
an
as a
actor?
teenager, yeah, I was going to be an actor. And
Did
then,
you model yourself after one actor in particular?
no, I couldn't, and that's why I didn't pursue it, because I didn't see myself as kind of like, I didn't see myself, my instrument, as kind of like this castable thing. I didn't see myself being cast as, but then actually in my spring drama festival, when I graduated, I was Touchstone and As You Like It, which was a great thing, but anyway, and that kind of, you know, if you're not afraid, I remember in my junior year, doing like, you know, King Lear. And so if you're a junior
As one
high
does
school-
when you're...
Yeah, I mean, if you're not intimidated by that, you're not going to be intimidated by anything, you know, trust me, right? And they took us to see stuff all the time, not just a lot of dance and a lot of opera and a lot of theater. So that's where that came from. And somehow I became involved with the costume department. Like before I graduated, the 2 years before I graduated, I worked on costumes there at that Performing Arts High School, and I got very into it. And then somehow I was always
What was
interested
it
in
about
fashion.
costumes that, as a high school student, that you liked?
Well, you know, it's the basics, right? It's color, it's textiles, it's hair, and makeup. You know, I like that stuff. I really like those subjects. And somehow it was integrated with that, and it was all up into fashion as well. And somehow that just took a route after high school. I went to Parsons and graduated Parsons, and then got jobs on 7th Avenue, and then eventually opened my own company. But it never left, and I had been working as a costume designer throughout. Like even before people knew who I was making costumes for things. And then I
Who were
worked
you
with,
working with in the early days?
in the early days, like, you know, student filmmakers and, you know, people that I knew from performing arts that were doing shows and calling or little movies. And then when I started my company, I worked with Bridget Avedon, the fabulous photographer, and he introduced me to Twyla Tharp, and she loved this one collection, and I did this Scottish ballet for her that was really beautiful for ABT. And it was like no break-in time. You know, when you buy a shoe and it's automatically comfortable. Like I was right in there with the ballerinas because I had many friends and I knew exactly what they needed. You know, and so that was great. Like the ballet costumes. Then I got to know Mark Morris. I sort of dated actually once or twice, and then we became like very good friends. And then I worked with him, and then we worked.
But there's
Now we
something,
work together
there's something in
a lot.
Mark's work which is so free and in terms of and musical.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would imagine you were influenced a lot by him as
Yes.
a director, right?
Yeah. Yes, I think so. Yes, absolutely.
Can you unpack that a little bit? 'Cause I think you might.
Sure. I mean, you know, one thing about Mark that I always agree with is that his work starts with a very good idea or a good idea about music. You know what I mean? Like, if he doesn't have any ideas about music, he probably won't approach it, right? You know, he's not a gun for hire, right? He's kind of like this musical genius. So if he has an idea, a bent towards something, he'll do it. And so, like, you know, that's a good example for us all. You know, it's a good example for us all. I mean, he's just a good example as in terms of like living his life. You know, like he always seemed so incredibly sort of focused and kind of fearless about things, which is a good example.
He and Balanchine are the only two choreographers that I've seen where you see the music on the bodies.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of understanding.
And also, not just see the music, but see a new kind of emphasis on a kind
Right,
of,
it's like,
you know, yeah.
it's there
Yeah.
and then beyond.
You know, like if you watch the Bach two-part violin thing, that beautiful Balanchine thing, you go like, I never heard this music before, you know. Or if you watch Mark's Gloria or something, you never heard that music before, you know, and you've heard it 1,000 times, yeah.
And that must have, I mean, you were
Oh, it's
close to
very
it.
deeply affects me, yeah, it deeply affects me. It's like, you know, there's one person on earth who you actually always agree with, 100%, at least the show you're seeing. Even if you don't like it so much, you know it's the right thing, you know, yeah. So.
You had a history of working with John Heginbotham before this, right?
Oh, yes, I do.
John is a company member of
Mark's, he was, and now he is the founder of Dance Heginbotham, his own company, which is really good. And weirdly, I took the job in St. Louis and got him to make a contract for this show. And then I decided that I'd been reading Peter and the Wolf at the Guggenheim for so many years. I don't know if you all have ever seen that, but it's really fun. And so I approached him about creating a show because I thought, I've been doing it so many times, I really have to finally go ahead and design and direct this, right? So we did, and luckily we did that before we did Magic Flute, so it was great. It was like this 20-minute show, and we kind of got a sense of each other, and also a sense of collaboration, you know? And by the way, you were talking about like Braque and Picasso going, stop, you know, it's like so many times I would go like, hey John, that's really good, don't change that, you know, because if you let a choreographer keep going on, they usually
We were
keep
talking about
changing
how
something.
Braque would tell Picasso to stop painting, that painting is finished, and
Yeah.
Picasso would tell Braque, stop painting.
Stop
that's
painting, yeah.
finished."
But like, for instance, that duet with those monkeys that I was talking about, like, I was sitting there like literally like quietly sobbing in the corner watching him put it together. And at some point he made up this lift that I thought was so beautiful and really it's something I had never seen. I think he made this lift up. It was really inspired, you know. It's kind of like double, like almost like a barrel of monkeys, you know. It was really beautiful. And at some point he was going to change it. It was like, don't you dare! That's the most beautiful thing you've done all day, you know. So it's good to have a good collaboration, you know.
I remember that if slide 15, the way the Shriners are pacing in the slide, I remember in an early brainstorming session, you doing this diagonal walk in front of John and saying, can't the Shriners just kind of walk on a slant like this? And
No, that was actually a dream I had. I dreamt that
Oh
the
my
Shriners
God.
were walking like that in my dream. How
wow.
crazy is that?
How was that, how were they walking?
They're walking on this, it's really beautiful because the music says,
I want him to.
Yeah.
oh, yeah, but the music actually to me says, please have the Shriners walk on the diagonal. Yeah. Because it sounds like people following each other. I think it's the most beautiful one of, well, I say that about all the music in the Magic Flute, like, oh, that's the most beautiful thing. No, that's the most beautiful thing, yeah.
Can we just go back to this one little jumpy place that you jumped over, which is you decided to direct.
Yeah, oh right. No, it wasn't even like I decided to direct, because I work with Mark so many times, and I love it. I love it. It feels so satisfying, because it almost feels like we are one person, you know? And sometimes it doesn't work that well, but I think it always, you know, it's just so satisfying, you know, the process and like, and by the way, if he doesn't like something, he says, that, I don't like that. And I just listen, because he's the auteur, he's the one, right? But then I found, after working with Mark, that I was kind of ruined for everybody else, you know? Once you go Mark, you never go back. And so I found that I could not work with a lot of other directors. I had been working with some other directors, and I just couldn't, because I'd be sitting in rehearsals going, really? Really? You know, right? I actually went to see a show last night called You Can't Take It With You, you know, the great Kaufman and Hart thing. And it was good, it was really good. And there was so many, it did get great reviews, and it was quite good. And there was so many, well, there was one particular thing that was like, I couldn't watch it because the costume was so wrong. You know, it was so wrong, and it would have been so much better had they just rethought this one costume, yeah. And so that's why I decided that I was going to try to direct. And one day I got home, and in the days of answering machines, like, please don't say what's an answering machine, because I'm going to slap you if you say it. Young people know that there was such a thing once called an answering machine. And on it was Jim Robinson going, hey, would you ever consider doing an opera for St. Louis Opera? And I still to this day think he meant, would you design an opera, right? But I took it like my crazy solipsistic self went like, oh, he wants me to direct an opera, you know? And so I called him, I was like, yes, of course I'll direct an opera. And he was like, oh, okay, yeah, good idea. I think I honestly do. He denies that that's the case, but I've since thrown the machine out, so I can't verify whether that was right or wrong. Yeah.
Now one of the things that one encounters in directing an opera is, you know, you prepare it, you think of all the story and the main characters, and you walk into the first day and you realize there's a chorus of 100 people looking at you saying, what should we do? That really the art of the opera is the art of the chorus.
Yeah.
And
Especially in that opera.
I wonder if you could, both of you perhaps, talk about how you rehearsed your relationship to chorus.
You know, I got there for part of the rehearsal that Isaac wasn't there for because whoever's responsible for the libretto, in this case me, because Schikaneder's been dead for 200 years, needs to be there when the conductor is rehearsing the singers in case there's any glitches. Although, of course, the first day I arrived, she said, I couldn't write your translation in my score because I already have 4 translations in it and there was no more room. She knows, Jane Glover knows this opera inside out. She's performed it all over the world. But watching her rehearse the singers was revelatory. I mean, for one thing, when you're writing lyrics, or the music was written around the words, there's a union between sound and sense. The musical stresses naturally fall on the most important words. And in the translation, in which the words might wind up in a slightly different order, it may be that key words wind up in parts of the musical phrase that are not heavily stressed. And so I watched Jane Glover work with the singers on singing a translation, which requires an additional skill, the skill of bringing out words that are at points that are not musically stressed. And it's a whole slightly different challenge, and she was so attuned to that. And I watched her rehearsing the chorus, which was, enormous. It was just huge, and it's so easy for them to sound mushy. And she knew exactly what she had to tell them to make the sound incredibly crisp, and you could hear the words they were singing, which is rare.
Well, one thing about that chorus is that they are great. I think that was the best part of our opera, was the chorus. They have a great chorus master, this guy, I forgot his name. He's amazing. And they're all really super young. They're very young, and they can actually produce a tone together. Like, it's not like old people like trying to find a note. No. They actually can find, if you say like B flat, they will sing you B flat.
And it sounds like you didn't encounter the
It's
problem,
great.
which is usually choruses are beat up.
That's what I'm saying, yes.
Sounds like...
We know who we're talking about.
Yeah, right.
Well, but here's the thing. The other thing is that, like, the myth of opera is that anybody understands anything that anybody's saying, okay? No matter how hard you work with singers and you make them enunciate things, they aren't going to understand what they're saying anyway. Even in English, they're not going to understand. Hence, they actually have subtitles at the opera in St. Louis, which is a little ridiculous. Not only is it translated into English, but they have subtitles. So I think, you have to read something before you go see it. You really do. Do you agree with that, or what?
Yeah, and I also think it's
Or
true.
suspend everything.
I think it's absolutely true that you don't understand, but what you can see is on the singer's body if they understand. Because you see a continuity, and then you also see if they don't understand.
Yes.
Which is what I think makes the difference between a great singer
Well,
I'm going to ask one more question. I'm still the question about the obstacles that you encountered in doing an opera is still open. We're still open with that question, but I'm going to ask one more question before I open it up to everybody, and I hope you will join into this conversation. But you described the notion of a film set, and I know my job as a director is why I also am so amazed how you also work as a designer, but my job is to imagine a world in which this play, whether it's an opera or a play, can actually animate, take life, take wing. It's a world that doesn't shut it down, doesn't reduce it. You set Julius Caesar in the Washington 60s, and therefore you're saying, who's being Kissinger? That reduces it, but you create a world in which there's flight and freedom. So I wonder if you could unpack a little bit the world that you imagine. The soundstage is great, and I also understand the notion of the film references.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, so, again, I was trying to, I hate saying the word correct. I was trying to address I find misogyny in the thing, right? So I thought it's about a woman. It's about the queen of the night, right? And to me, it just felt like she was this ghost. It felt like she was a ghost. And so she kind of lived on a catwalk that she kept entering from stage right, from a catwalk. And everybody else had a million entrances. She only had one entrance from stage right to center, maybe somehow left, but usually she would revert back to right. And she was this kind of ghost, and then she came down finally when she addressed her daughter. She came down the stairs and addressed her daughter to kill the father, or to kill Sarastra. But so I thought of it as this ghost of a silent movie star living this nightmare of a drama, right?
Right.
And that was what would address the misogyny. It's like, And she kept like, and so really her presence was constant. She's the first thing you see.
So she's in a way the dreamer of the dream.
The dreamer of the dream, exactly. The dreamer of the nightmare in this case, you know, yeah. And somewhere it was kind of funny, you know, it's kind of funny if you do that to it, it's kind of funny. And also she's in control, and at the end of the opera, I kind of wanted to make it like we're starting all over again, which is why somehow that makes it less about, you know, less about men sort of doing this horrible thing to this queen, like shackling this queen, foiling her at the end, right? Yeah, I just thought it was, that was the first thing. That and the idea that I wanted it to be danceable, and my favorite kind of dance that John does is this kind of like fusion of, you know, modern ballet and jazz ballet. You know, it's kind of like, you know, Sid Charisse is what I wanted for this. I wanted Sid Charisse, you know. And actually, the serpent in the thing is based on Juliet Prowse. You know who Juliet Prowse is? There was this hilarious thing called Can. It's like an Adam and Eve ballet, and there's a serpent in it. And it's just her sort of like doing all this kind of like sexy stuff to like Adam, the serpent.
Yeah.
You know, because they all have like tiny waists and those really big hips. She does all that kind of great, like, actually modern ballet that looks like, it's jazz ballet, but it looks like Jerome Robbins or like Balanchine, actually. But anyway, so that was where it all started, from that. And then, you know, it does need to, you do need to kind of like cut things off and say, no, it's not about that anymore, it's not about that anymore, it's not about that anymore. It is about this, you know, and it just became about the soundstage. That's
I love the notion of her being above and then finally coming down.
Yeah.
She
came down the stairs. And actually, I'm sorry, she ascends in the very beginning.
Yeah, I was going to say,
That's
but
right.
you got to talk about her.
That's
entrance.
right. She has the greatest entrance.
Please
You know
describe
that. Well, I'm sorry, I don't have to describe it. She comes from a VOM because it's a weird theater. It's like not exactly theater in the round, but it's not a proscenium stage. It has like a very big thrust.
Around thrust.
Yeah. And it has VOM entrances, like you walk up a ramp onto the stage. It almost feels like people are coming in from the audience. And I've known this, I worked there, don't forget, right? So the first entrance she has, she comes up a VOM, and she has a long blue train, and then she walks from the VOM left to right, on stage. And the train doesn't stop, and then she turns and goes the other way, and the train doesn't stop. And then she goes up the stairs, so she has this huge blue train. It's really good.
How
That's
long
like
is
all
that?
glittery. It's really
The
long.
audience was gasping.
I mean,
It
it
was
was
like,
really-
it just never stopped.
Because the
It was
music,
like
it
zigzags
says to me,
4 times.
yeah, it zigzags and zigzags.
And
Finally,
it's
she's
like
up on
billowy
the stop.
silk.
Right.
It's like
Yeah.
the night sky has like enveloped the stage.
And glitter, and a moon. It was really good. The door opened and there was a moon.
course,
It was
glitter.
really good.
100 pounds of glitter.
No, but that's
Yeah, there were hundreds of pounds.
That's you know, a key. It's, I guess one would call it an opening gesture. You have an opening gesture, you have a closing gesture, which sets up the expectations.
But that music where she enters is so grand. If I ever have to make an entrance, I will make it too.
You know, I'm so interested, then we'll open this up. When you say that she enters from stage right, so say we're on stage, so that means she's entering from here, so you're looking at this. Alfred Hitchcock said this amazing thing, that if you have a character enter from stage right or house left, they're always friendly. But if you have a character enter from stage left, house right, they're always scary and mean and nasty. And so if you look at Mrs. Danvers in Rebecca, she always comes in from house right, and she's always still. She just suddenly is there, so you never trust her.
That's
So I'm just interested that you chose the familiar, friendly side.
Isn't that nice of me?
Yeah.
Actually, women Hitchcock trusts.
Say
Are
again?
there actually women Hitchcock trusts?
That's another question.
That's
We'll get
another
into-
symposium.
Another symposium. Where would you like to take this, ladies and gentlemen? It's wonderful to be here with you this evening. Anybody want to start? Any brave soul?
Sure. Isaac, I'd love it if you could talk a little bit about sort of the conversation that you have with yourself when you have a design idea and a directing need, and how they coincide.
I love that question.
Yeah, it's a good question.
He's a Columbia actor, Brad.
Well, I never, so far, I have not worked as a director unless I've designed, so I don't know what the difference would be. And, but I've worked as a designer with different directors. And you know, this is a horrible thing to say, but you know, collaboration, I think, is a lot about chemistry and about like sort of wanting to give it up to somebody else a little bit and wanting to sort of dominate them a little bit, do you know? And so it's only good when it works, and that isn't usually. Do you know what I mean? Usually it sort of doesn't work. And you know, and when it works, you want to do it again and again and again, right? I feel like I'm describing the sexual act for some reason. It is the same thing. So, the point is that like, you know how many times you have bad sex, right? It's kind of like that, and you do it. But anyway, so then when you get it right, and then you just get this thing, and you go like, well, I don't have to talk to anybody. You're just going to do it all, you know? And it's kind of like a very terrible thing if it doesn't work. But if it does work, and it works for you anyway, I don't know. I mean, that's something else we should talk about. I don't know if you want to bring it to there, but this idea of like the critical discourse of one's work, you know? And, yeah, because it's like at the end, that's, I think, the biggest challenge when you're talking about not collaborating with people, because if the costumes are bad, and the set is bad, or the show is bad, it's all your fault. You know what I mean? Whereas, like, you know, you could say, oh, well, here's what's bad about that set or something, or this stage direction or whatever, right? But so what stops, I think, like what stops me sometimes from acting is this idea of opening up thoughts that I have to a critical discourse, you know? Like, and that's what scared me about this show, because I had such a distinct idea about it. And I didn't need designers. I could design it myself because I knew exactly how I wanted Queen of Night to enter. I knew exactly how I wanted Papageno to enter, you know? And so I didn't want to work with other people, but then I have to like open myself up to like a lot of critics who don't see shows the way I see them, you know? And that's okay, right? That's okay. And for the most part, I think we got quite good reviews, right? It doesn't matter the good review versus the bad review. It's like how you want the show to be perceived, you know? And you forget that you're presenting it to people, right? Because you have to have such a crazy vision for something. You were talking about a world that you have to envision, right? And sometimes the world is wrong. Is it?
It doesn't, sometimes it doesn't work.
Sometimes it doesn't work, yeah.
Wrong usually means it doesn't come across.
Doesn't come across, yeah, exactly, yeah.
And things changed a lot in rehearsal. You know, it turned out that Levi Hernandez, who sang Papageno, for example, could really act.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of a sudden, you know, you were making up
Yes.
more stuff for him to do. And,
That's
you
right.
know,
And there were certain scenes that just wouldn't work because the people could not act. They were great singers, but they couldn't make you laugh if they stood on their head. They couldn't
But
make you laugh.
that's when a director's job is to adjust. You have to be able to adjust,
Yes.
and you can't go away and adjust. You have to adjust in the moment.
On the moment, yeah, adjust.
And there's no taking it away to reevaluate.
Yes, and the thing about
Which is
opera,
terrible.
I know, it's terrible. The other thing about opera that's sort of terrible is that it's supposed to be about music and about singing music, right? And so, like, much as you want to make it a great show, sometimes you have to sacrifice those things to make it a beautiful musical experience, which is why I'm so lucky to have had Jane there, you know? But you know what I mean, right? It's like, you go,
But
well...
there's also some singers who will not turn left on a high C.
Right, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And also some singers who are playing like, you know, incredibly handsome, dashing young men, and they're 60 and they're 350 pounds. You know what I mean? So it's like, you can't get a dashing young man to play a dashing young man because they can't sing very well, you know?
And so then you have to ask who that person is and how to love them.
That's right, and or be fearless enough to like make some changes, like Schikaneder, who was not a very great singer. He was a good singer, you know, but he was a charmer, right? And you have to approach that music in that way. And sometimes people go, really, you're doing that with Mozart? And the answer is yes, because that is, you're still showing it to people. You still have to make it like a good show for people to watch. It's showbiz.
I remember, you know, working with like Sarastro, who was sung by a singer who had this enormous, incredible, beautiful, gorgeous, big voice.
Okay.
And he was like, you know, I liked his voice maybe more than you. But, you know, he was like 23 years old or 22 years old, and his big challenge was like to stand on stage looking like the boss. And that was really hard for him.
Yes. Yeah.
He stood on stage looking big, but like a kid.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm interested in how you approached and sort of reconciled some of the changes you decided to make in terms of what you were focusing on, and you said not corrections, it's sort of emendations you were making, addressing the things like the misogyny, and how you sort of reconciled that with sort of the original intent of the piece.
I'll say we decided that we wanted to make it a magic flute that was more appropriate to our age, and that meant jettisoning some of the original intent. We understood what Mozart and Schikaneder were out to do, and felt that what they were out to do was no longer 100% relevant to the way an audience today would see the play. And so, small, small tweaks, like to remove a little bit of the misogyny. It happens all the time in the play that, the priests are saying, oh yeah, women are useless, and they prattle and don't say anything. And in Schikaneder's, the women that sing, oh yes, we are useless and prattle and don't say anything. And, I had the priests still saying those lines, but then I had the women saying something different, not agreeing that women are idiots. And I think audiences today would hear that quite differently than an audience 200 years ago.
Yeah, there's a way, for one thing, I'm not even for addressing things in that way. I think you should present something the way it was written, probably, right?
In that way, meaning what? You were not interested in?
Usually, I think something about this opera, it's not my main, I don't know why, I didn't mean to be political.
In most other works.
I'm not a very political guy, my work is not that terribly political, but somehow that always bothered me, that it was an opera made for the family, and since it was written, it has very much become something for kids. At least when I was a kid, it was an opera for kids. And they made it at the Met, 90 minutes, to appeal more to kids, right? So I guess there's something about this opera that is supposed to be about kids. And something about it didn't sit right with me. I don't mind when certain things are ironic or very multidimensional, so it might seem racist or it might seem this or that. I don't mind, I think that's what makes things good. But something about this show, I wanted to somehow give the kid an option, so that it wasn't saying women are fussy, stupid creatures that can't make up their mind and will lead a man who's wonderful and strong astray. Because that's basically what the opera says again and again, And so it was great because whenever they would say that in our opera, the audience was laughing at something. Like John, we got John to make up this really good dance. There's one particular time when the speaker and his people are sort of, hitting this thing home again about how women are so stupid and you can't listen to women. And we had the monkeys again doing this funny stuff behind them, that scene in I Love Lucy where they carry the plant behind. Does anyone know who I Love Lucy was? Lucy carries the plant behind her and everybody's laughing and she can't figure out why they're laughing. We sort of did that a lot in the show. So it was good, that it gave the kid an option to go oh really? Look, they're making fun of him because he's saying something pretty stupid, So I like that. That's what I like about this. But I'm not this political person. I remember working with a really smart guy called Scott Elliott, and I would love to work with him again. He's a theater director. He did a production of The Women, right? And he really showed what was going on in that time. Rather than try and kind of make it politically correct, he actually had only black people cast as the help. And everybody smoked. They were in exercise class smoking. It was really that show. And the racism was just rampant and spoken, and he just presented it. And it was a great show, I thought, because of that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Right. So I think both are good. But in this particular case, would you say, because it's this kid thing, I don't know, I just want to give an option. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's that semi-famous Mozart quote that goes something like, the music isn't in the notes, but in the sounds in between.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a parallel to that in set design, costume design, directing, etc., or at least the work or that you do as it relates to opera?
Yes. I bet that a lot of people have said things like that. Negative space, right? Negative space, and that's a big subject, I think, too. But I don't know how it relates to, I don't know how it relates exactly to the show that I conceived and designed, other than, you know, one considers that always.
You know what it makes me think of, though, in terms of directing, not necessarily design, but I think it would apply, is that in the theater and the opera, you have to consider almost more when you don't show than when you do show, which is what creates that space that's in the music.
Yes.
And so that's, that consciousness, which is only felt by the audience, it's not, you can't prove it, gives the space in between. So in a way you want to do just enough, I mean, I think, just enough so that the audience has a job. And their job is they are part of a circular event, so that you give them something to do by not doing everything. In film and television, you do everything. You have to show everything.
And speaking of Hitchcock, he had that word MacGuffin, which is what the audience doesn't see, that they don't even need to know. They just know that something occurred to make that character walk on stage with blood all over his hands. It's the MacGuffin. Like, we don't need to know that he just, you know, I don't know what he did to make him all bloody, but that's the MacGuffin, right? That's what you're talking about too, in a way you've made what he asked about that. And that's true. Another thing is what we left out of the libretto, right? It's like,
Right.
we just left stuff out
All
because
chatter.
we left the chatter out. Yeah. And the other thing I thought of was, like, speaking of things that happen off stage, we did this thing, that incredibly beautiful song of Pamina. I choke up just thinking about it. She's going to kill herself. And we just, I don't know what I decided. I decided there's this catwalk, and we kept seeing her being carried by different men to dance Pamina. You know, carried first by her lover, and she was like in heaven, right? And then it turned into this horrible dark fantasy where she was carried by her father, and there was like this light at the end of the catwalk. It was really dark and kind of nice, I thought. And you don't know what's going to go on stage when he carries her off. It's really awful. But yeah, I don't know how many people got that, but
I thought it was beautiful. I mean, the advantage of having dancers doubling the singers is that, you know, the singer could be singing, and then this whole backstory is being told visually at the same time.
that's another thing, right? Exactly. In this particular production. Oh, thank God you asked that question. I don't know what I thought at first. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you had a question.
I was going to ask you mentioned you had an interest in dance going back to when you were a teenager. Did you do any kind of training? Did you go into ballet and tap and
Yes.
jazz?
Yeah.
And if so, how did that impact, or did it impact your direction?
Well, you know, I went as an actor in performing arts in those days. You had to take ballet, modern dance, and yoga. We had a yoga class, yes, yes.
Wow.
And they were all taught by the same person. But he was amazing. But anyway, you know, so yeah, we were trained literally for at least 2 years. We had dance class 3 times a week, right? At least for 2 years, if not the entire time I was there. I don't exactly remember, but. And there was a huge dance department at Performing Arts, huge. And they were just on another floor. And it was a very small school. And there were literally like 100 people in each grade or something, you know. And there were like 25 actors and 25 musicians and 25 dancers. And again, like this obsession with what they could do with their bodies that I couldn't do. You know, that's more like it. I never thought of myself as an instrument that I could actually do that. I always wished, but I have weird legs. I have good legs, but I have weird like hamstrings. They're very tight and I have weird high arches, and it's a nightmare. And so I used to wish that I could actually like intercourse with music like that. And that's what drives me, you know, that's what I like.
Did that impact your directing, or do you feel
Yeah.
like
Yes, it does. Especially in this case, and especially in the case of Peter and the Wolf, by the way. Yeah, so far, like both things I've done are very dance friendly, very dance kind of.
I find that I fall in love with performers who can do what I just dream of doing, and I get to watch them fly, and I get such pleasure out of it.
Yeah, it's great.
Physical pleasure.
Yes, visceral pleasure, right?
Yeah. Here and then yes, sir.
Would you have done the same production if you were doing it in New York rather than the Midwest?
That's
Yes.
the question. Oh,
Yeah.
that's your question?
Give kind of feedback on that, if St. Louis kind of made choices, so yeah.
Well, I have to say I was so happy because as a director, you kind of lose perspective, right? Of your work, you don't know what the hell it looks like. And all you see are all the mistakes. That's all I see, like when I see shows. I saw like 4 or 5 performances of the show, and I saw a million rehearsals, right? And all I could see were the flaws. And then I went away for a bit, and then I came back later in the festival to see it again. And I brought these 2 friends of mine that are super mean. They're incredibly mean people, and they're incredibly honest people. Like, they would not tell me if something wasn't good. And they loved it, like loved it. They loved it. They're so smart. And I was like, oh, I guess it was good, And one of my friends said, you have to get this produced in New York. You must, And I thought, well, yeah, exactly. To answer your question, it would have been exactly the same show, except maybe cast differently. Just a little slight tweaking on the cast.
Maybe you can resurrect City Opera.
Yes, single-handedly.
Or the Amato.
What's
What?
that?
Or the
The
Amato.
Amato, yeah. That's not big enough. I don't think they could do it. Do they have a chorus, the Amato? Yeah.
They don't have anything.
They don't have anything.
It's dead.
That's what I said.
Sad.
I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about your experience in fashion design versus your experience with costume design and what kind of the relationship between those 2 things is.
Okay. As a 25-year-old, when I started my company, and as a 16-year-old, when I started my trajectory in fashion when I was at Parsons and then working, etc., it was just a different thing. I didn't realize, in a way, the object of the game as a fashion designer. I didn't realize it was to sort of like suppress a woman. I didn't think it was about like limiting what she could wear. But if you really look at it, that's sort of what you're doing. You're going, no, not that, this, But that's not what I thought it was. That's not why I went into it. I went into it because I thought, here is my opportunity to show, to create a kind of, to synthesize a world for a woman, right? Like a beautiful, aspirational, good world for a woman, That's what I really thought it was. And as I got into it, I realized that, you're not necessarily going to succeed that much unless you do a few things, like suppress a little bit, kind of sell way too much, and in a way, like feed into the worst thing about her. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I found, right? It's very, very hard to kind of like appeal to like, I don't know what it is about people when they're shopping for clothes. It's like they become animals, right? They like self-loathing animals. Like, they can't imagine, and you have to appeal to this thing like, oh, no, darling, please. I mean, it's very rare that you get someone going, how are you today? Let's take all your clothes off and put this bathing suit on. There was, that doesn't happen. You know what I mean? It really is traumatic. And I didn't bargain for that. I didn't think, but it is. You can just do so much. And so like I try to democratize it. I try to do like a popular kind of thing with it. I do, because I still believe that human beings are particularly smart, So that's where I am with fashion. And in theater, it's sort of the opposite. It's like you're dictating. You're going like, no, you wear this because the character is this, right? And usually an actress or someone will push back or something, go like, no, I think this, and I like that. It's like, it's more of an intellectual thing where we're actually not talking about her or him, we're talking about character. You know what I mean?
Amina did that. Elizabeth
Pamina
Sarkar.
did it, but every actress I've ever worked with hates her wig. Are you kidding me? They all hate the wig, and then you have to go like, please, and then you go to the wig master, don't change your thing, and pretend you changed it, and they pretend, it's like, oh, it looks much better. It's like, okay, it looks great, great.
Such an old game.
I know, it's horrible, it's true.
But what gave you the audacity to start your own company at 25?
I don't know. I was just so tired of, again, it's about working with others and listening to others. I have a threshold for that. I get to a threshold, and I do, instead of like lashing out and punching someone, I just do something myself, That's what I do.
It's admirable. Yes.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the green glasses corner.
Yeah, you like.
I like both of them, yes.
So if you could direct anything in design, you have to do both, on Broadway, what would it be?
On Broadway?
Like Scott Rubin calls you tomorrow and he's like, whatever you want.
You mean a revival of something?
Whatever you want.
Oh, God. Oh, I actually know what I want to do. I'm working on it. I can't talk about it. I'm hopefully going to do it. In like a
Is there
million years
something
from now.
else?
Something else. I have to say,
Scott Rudin called you and said,
Rudin, wow. I might do, oh God. Can we get to this? Can I come back to this?
Sure.
Because it'll come to me. I don't know. I mean, what a dream. Do you know Scott Rudin? Can you get him on the phone?
I'll text you.
All right, let me think about that. Because, I'm also very chameleon-like. Like, I think I would like to direct now, like, some Kaufman and Hart thing, like The Royal Family, or, one of those plays, or like, Kaufman and
I
Further.
think you should do The Visit by Doran Mott.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Adventure.
I need to do translation.
Exactly.
I need to do translation.
Yeah.
Translation, Susan can do that.
Yes, indeed.
But can you
That would be good.
imagine?
Oh my God.
Could be so amazing.
Oh, now I want to do it. Now, you see how easily I see how easily
Yeah, but I'm right, you should do it.
Doing that is
Right.
great.
Or the chairs or something. I'm trying to think of like a lot. There's a lot of things I want to do.
Nobody's done this in a long time.
Nobody's done it.
And it
That's
really
true.
does need a new
I
translation.
know you're right about this, but.
I mean, imagine it, this lady who comes back from revenge.
Mhm.
There's ritual killing.
Wow.
A
Is that what you
village that's
think?
obsessed with money and.
Or Annie, get your gun.
I can't remember what time we
May.
end.
8.
5 to 8.
Oh, great, okay, good. We have more questions. Isaac, you had something.
Me?
No, that,
I'm sorry. Is there someone named Isaac?
Isaac.
Anna, you're talking to me.
Matt. Isaac's over here. Transfer. Do you have something? He's a smart guy.
He also has green glasses.
Also has
And also, he's really interested in directing opera. So
Oh, you
I
are?
think he should, he's a good director and he wants opera. So here's your chance.
So talk about is there like when you talk about like when you decided I'm gonna do the Magic Flute, did you and you ended up with the concept of I'm on a sound stage.
Yeah.
What took you to that? Other than the ideas of the reducing misogyny, like the images that you chose, why did you choose them?
I mean, I can't tell you. I don't know. I have no idea. It started with something, a little thought, and it grew. I don't exactly know what the thought was. It could be, I don't know. I honestly don't know what made me think of Queen of the Night as a silent movie star, dead silent movie star. I don't know what made me think that thought. I don't know.
That's awesome.
I hope it's awesome. I hope it's awesome. I hope it's awesome. But, yeah. Brigadoon?
Yes.
Answer your question.
Yeah, we're going to continue it. but yes.
Aside from like dressing an actor in what they're supposed to look like as the character, do you find that you also like incorporating the personality, which makes you tinker the costume a little bit to be a good match?
For sure, absolutely, yes. Yes. I mean, and that's one thing that's that I don't agree, like when there are like sort of dogmas about the way someone's supposed to sing a role because it was done that way before, the way someone's supposed to look on stage, because that's the costume, Yeah, I don't like that. I think that's not so smart, because everybody is individual. And then, of course, you have to stay within the realm of something, right? I guess.
I think the issue is when doing a big iconic classic is to ask the question, what happened on its opening night? Like, what was the cultural event? Because a lot of times I think we imitate the way it's supposed to look, but I think rather than imitating the way it's supposed to look, you try to channel the energy that it released in its first exposure. Because obviously it's become a classic for some reason. It's done something culturally. So you try to bottle that somehow, which means that you don't necessarily try to imitate a look of another production, but to capture
That makes perfect sense.
Zeitgeist of the moment or something.
Yeah. Which is tricky.
When you're working with actors, I'm presuming that you have worked with actors instead of just opera singers, but do you find that you need them to see your world, or you do?
So to
then-
at least acknowledge it, yes.
Mhm.
Like I worked with this incredible actress called Amy Irving, you know who she is, right? Amy Irving. And she worked with me in that revival of Little Night Music. She was Desiree Armfeld, right? That great, it's a great part. I think it's such a good show. And you know, she came in and I cast the fabulous Sean Phillips as her mother, right? It was really good casting. You know who she is, Sean Phillips. And she had done it before, actually. I didn't even know her. We were just like, oh, you know who would be great? Sean Phillips. Oh yeah, of course she's done it 1,000 times. She's old in English, yeah. So anyway, so Amy thought she would do English, and she did a great English accent. And I was sitting there the first 3 days listening to these rehearsals thinking, how am I going to break it to her that I hate the English accent? And that it's so wrong, it takes me so out of everything, you know? And I did, and she wasn't going to have it, she wasn't going to have it. And finally I was like, just try it once, right? And like everybody just audibly sighed in the room when she started speaking, you know, without an English accent.
Normal?
And she felt great that day. She felt, it really worked. And I was so happy that she actually, you know, and we literally were at each other's throats. Like she's not the most, she's difficult, right? She's an amazing artist. And she's difficult, like every amazing artist I know, right? And we really were not going to back down until I just go, hey, wait a minute, just try this, you know? And we were getting along great on every other level, and then she couldn't because she was working on it for so long before she brought it to St. Louis, right? But it was like this audible, like, thawing in the room. Like, people could hear the ice melt. Like, everybody just loved her so much more without the accent. And so, you know, to answer your question, just to be heard, of course, you know, yeah.
But that's the thing, is that what gets in your way of hearing the way it wants to be is your idea, one's ideas, right? If she comes in with this idea, or you come in with an idea, but how, and I think that's the grace of rehearsals, whether it's opera or theater, is that you're actually listening to somebody, and they're actually listening to the effect of it, and it's palatable, and it's physical.
And also, as a fashion designer, you kind of learn how to put things gently. It's like you can't like stand there in a fitting and go, oh, that looks like the inside of a wig, that dress. I mean, you can't say things like that. You have to say like, what if we, now you always have to pose it in a question, like, what if we take that dress off, right? And then everybody knows to take the dress off. Just say, like, you know what, that is the ugliest thing in the planet. You know, so, because it's just it's weird because there are so many fittings, there are so many reasons to say that's hideous or not good or whatever, yeah.
But there are people who do that all the time, right? Who say hideous things.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. Yes, I've heard. I've heard.
I've only seen it in movies. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to stop now. Thank you very much. Thank you.